Hello, I'm Dale Leftwich with RealAgriculture. Today we're at Agriculture in Motion. We're with Joy Agnew. She is the Manager of Research Services with PAMI. And welcome to the show today.
Thank you.
You just gave a presentation here at the show, and the presentation was on 5 myths around grain storage. Do you want to just talk a little bit about those 5 myths?
So the information that I give in this presentation and similar presentations is that my goal is just to give producers as much information as they can so that they can make their own management decisions, because there is a lot of factors at play. That the environment within inside a bin, especially if you're blowing air through it, is extremely complex. So the talk that I give just tries to give them information that they can use to help make their own decisions.
So these are 5 fairly standard myths around storage of grain. And is there one that you would like to talk about a little bit more in depth here at this moment?
Sure. So the one that probably raises the most comments and questions is air at night drier than air during the day?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about that. Yeah, a lot of different opinions about that. Yeah.
So in my presentation, I show that if you look at the physics behind it and you look at air's capacity to hold moisture and how much water it's currently holding, it is in fact true that air at night is drier than air during the day, because it's physically holding less water, less grams of water. And that's completely against kind of the general feeling about it, because at night, the air feels clammy and, the dew is falling, and it just doesn't seem like air at night is drier, but it physically is. It's just that it's closer to saturation, and that's why it feels clammy, but it also, the saturation level is a lot smaller than during the day, so there's just physically less water in the air at night.
So what that means is that the water is drier, but it's holding as much. The air is drier, but it's holding as much water as it can almost.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. But when it comes to drying grain, you're more concerned or interested in how much more water the air can hold before it becomes saturated.
Okay.
Because that's what's happening when you blow air through grain to dry it. Is the grain is essentially pulling or absorbing water out of the grain and then taking to the top of the bin. So it has to have capacity to hold that moisture. And
that's why they call it relative humidity, right? Relative to the amount of moisture it can hold.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So when you look at it from that perspective, I guess, then air during the day has a higher capacity to dry because it can physically hold more water before it becomes saturated. So that's sort of the confusion around that night versus day, is that the air at night is drier, but the air during the day has greater capacity to dry.
You gave a really good example earlier when you talked about glasses and how much water could be in a glass compared to how much water the glass should be able to hold. You want to just talk a little bit about what you said there?
My water glass analogy is basically showing that air during the day can hold more water, so it's a big glass. Air at night is a smaller glass. And relative humidity is essentially percentage of full. So air during the day is a big glass. If it's a 50% humidity day, it's half full. So that means there's still that much more headspace to take up moisture. I also use the water glass analogy to illustrate how grain temperature affects the air's capacity to dry, because as soon as the air passes through grain, if the grain is a different temperature, the air temperature is going to change, and it might change its capacity to hold moisture depending on whether it cools or warms. So warm air, let's say a big glass that's half full, if you pass that through cool grain, that air is going to cool off. And so the glass is going to shrink, but the water that was already in the glass has to go somewhere. And depending on how much water was in the glass and how small the glass shrinks, that water might actually spill over the edge.
So in other words, if you're putting warm air into a cold bin where the grain is actually cold, what can happen is that the moisture can come out of the air.
Exactly.
Even though it's, when it actually feels like it should be drier.
Right.
So then you can actually put moisture in the grain, and part of the problem there is that it's not mixed throughout the entire.
Exactly.
So you can create problems.
Theoretically, yes.
Yeah.
Luckily, though, that is a short-lived phenomenon, because that really depends on the grain being cool to cool it down. As soon as you pass warm air through grain for a certain period of time, it's going to warm up, and then you have, big glass half full again. So it's all right. But I guess that illustration just, I see a lot of eyebrows raised at that, saying, oh, maybe I should not only run my fan for a couple hours at a time when the grain is cool, because that's what's happening immediately after turning on the fan.
Right. So the cause of the problem is running a fan with warm air going into cold grain.
Right.
The solution to the problem is continuing to run the fan.
Yes.
So then you can just keep running it. Don't turn it on and off like that in that circumstance.
That's right.
But one of the big things that you were trying to get across is that you were doing a myth sort of confirmed or busted, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
which is really helpful to people. But you were also trying to explain that there are a lot of variables.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's that's why there's no easy answer to the question, when should I run my fans?
Right.
It depends on way too many factors. There's no single answer or, do this if this. It's just you need to account for a lot of things. Air temperature, air humidity, grain temperature, grain moisture. That's just the starting point.
Right.
Airflow rate and relative risk and, time it's going to be in storage, all of that has to be accounted for as well.
Okay, so PAMI is the Prairie Agricultural Machinery Institute.
Yes.
And you are working across Western Canada.
Yep.
You're in fact doing some research on big bins and multiple fans in Manitoba, and that research is coming out. So if people need to know more information than what we're sharing here today, where do they get that information?
So we have some information posted on our website, PAMI.ca, and then
Okay.
/storage.
Okay.
And then we're continuing to build that content right now. We are working with some partners with the Ministry of Ag here in Saskatchewan and Alberta Pulse Growers to develop fact sheets and online tools that farmers can use to help sort out all of these conditions during storage and how to manage it.
Right. So there's always more information coming up on the web, on the PAMI website, to make sure to help farmers.
You bet.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, well, I want to thank you today for being with us, Joy, and I hope we look forward to seeing all the results as it comes out that you're able to post on the
Great.
website.
I look forward to sharing it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.